But many times when I was cleaning toilet seats, I have thought like, what I'm doing here? Why did I leave my comfortable job to do this? But as long as you've been here, you are growing and you are learning that you need to be happy with what you have. So it's a liquid love where if that's your option, embrace it, make it the best.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode number 39 of the Immigrant Life podcast, where we share stories of people who left their country to chase a better life. And through these stories, you can find ideas, resources, and motivation to do the same. I'm Biasi, and my guest this week is originally from Brazil and moved to New Zealand about 10 years ago without a visa and money. Still, despite that, he managed to become a New Zealand citizen. Rafael didn't plan to leave Brazil permanently. He just wanted to learn English to find better opportunities in his country. He quit a good career in Brazil, and when he moved to New Zealand, he worked as a cleaner to pay the bills and stay longer in the country. In the end, his perseverance and humility led him to New Zealand citizenship. Before moving to my conversation with Rafael, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. It would be great if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcast or Podchaser. And also, if English is your second language and you have problems understanding our accents, you can find the transcript of this episode in the show notes. Just visit immigrantslife.com/episode 39. And now, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Rafael. Hi, Rafael. Thanks for being on the show.
Hello, Daniel. It's not a problem. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Should we start from saying to the listener where you're originally from and where do you live now?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rafael. I am originally from Brazil, São Paulo. At the moment, I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. I've been in New Zealand for the last 10 years and a half. And that time in New Zealand, I have moved around initially from Queenstown to Wellington, Wellington to Christchurch, and now I am based in Auckland.
And let's start from the beginning. What age did you leave your country?
I was 24 when I left Brazil. I recently finished my studies and I decided to embrace this challenge.
And why did you decide to leave Brazil?
I mentioned I was just about to finish my studies and I had a good friend, a close friend who went to New Zealand a year and a half before myself. And she encouraged me. Actually, she was the precursor for my big change. And I initially came to New Zealand to stay a year and study English in Queenstown, would have a support from her side. But at the end, as you guys will understand on the duration of the podcast, things has been changed, but mainly was a friend that encouraged me.
And what made you stay in New Zealand for longer?
Well, I believe initially the curiosity, everything was new. My initial goal of learning English wasn't achieved. It's still not. I still have a lot to improve on my English, but at that time I couldn't have a proper conversation. So it wasn't a real time to think of going back. And I analyzed all the possibilities, opportunities I had, and I managed to get a work visa in a cleaning company in Queenstown. From there, opportunities start to appear. My network was bigger, and I moved to another place that was restaurant in Queenstown still, and I was doing a different role. I was a kitchen hand. It was a tough work, but pretty pleasurable. Then the life was slowly going on, and the quality of life actually I was having with a very small amount of resource. It actually was the main thing to keep me where I am right now. So what I'm saying is that it's very possible, very reachable to have a good quality of life in New Zealand with a very little money, because beats are around, it's pretty easy to reach, possess cars or travel around by bus, high checking. And that was something that really touched me. apart learning a new culture and getting to know new people, traveling. Yes, mainly those are the reasons that kept me here.
Okay. I just want to clarify that Queenstown, for people that are not familiar with New Zealand, it's situated in the middle of the South Island, and is like a really touristy place, right?
Yes, that's right.
If people are familiar with Whistler in Canada, it's pretty much like Whistler with a lot of outdoor activities and a lot of tourism. So for you, it was like an easy place to find a job there?
Yes, actually, Queenstown is chill. I believe it's the most touristic place in New Zealand. It's very seasonal, so everything works by ski fields, winter time, or water sports on summertime. There is a beautiful landscape, and
it's where they shot the Lord of the Rings as well.
Yes, there are some spots there, exactly. And I think 70% of the city works behind the tourism. So hotels, restaurants, and activities for sports. So there are a very small amount of local people, but a lot of people come and going all the time.
And we were talking about this the other day when we're knowing each other before the interview. Leaving Brazil wasn't easy for you. You went to New Zealand without a visa and pretty much with no money or like a little money.
Yes, I think I am now. I can consider myself a very brave and courageous person, because looking back, I had a plan coming to New Zealand with money I would get from my previous employer, but things didn't work out properly, which made me to think of still coming to New Zealand without speaking English, without money, without really knowing the culture, and also I didn't have a visa at that time. I didn't even know about working holiday visa. So my initial plan was move to Queenstown and pay for English course at least 6 months. Idea was to have a good English in 6 months of studies and then look for work for more 6 months and then coming back. I had a return check. As a Brazilian, we have to have a return check to go to New Zealand. So I decided to embrace the challenge, and I arrived in Queenstown as a tourist. After 2 months, I managed to find a sponsor, a place where gave me a visa. That visa was valid for a year, and things was running pretty good. We are looking back 10 years ago, where a very small number of people were considering to leave their countries. New Zealand wasn't really on the top of the map, and there were a lot of opportunities of work in different places. I managed to move to another sponsor easily, and then I did the other way around, and then I applied for working holiday visa. So basically, that was my story in New Zealand. I changed the plans, yeah.
Because you told me that after 2 years you were in New Zealand, you decided to move back to Brazil.
Yes, actually, after 2 years, it was about to turn 2 years. I took a flight to Brazil. I was still working visa. I had my holidays for a month. I went to Brazil when my friend, a Brazilian friend, he decided to move to New Zealand as well. And when we came together, I mentioned initially that I had a friend who was here before myself, and I know her and this guy, Roberto, as another girl from my work back in Brazil. We were friends for a long time. And nowadays we managed to, 3 of us, unfortunately not 4 of us, but 3 of us still be in New Zealand. We are settled here. So I went for Brazil for a holidays, still seeing how things would be there. But I decided to come back once I had my returning ticket with my friends. That was when we applied for working holiday visa, and I moved from Queenstown to Wellington. I stayed in Wellington for a short time. Someone I met in Queenstown moved to Christchurch straight after the big earthquake. So he opened a business painting company, and he needed employers. And he offered myself and my friend the opportunity to work with him.
You went back to Brazil, you figure out that wasn't the place you wanted to be, and you moved back to New Zealand because apparently you liked the lifestyle or whatever New Zealand could give you more than what Brazil could give you at the time. What was your plan when you decided to move to New Zealand and learn the language?
I finished my studies in Brazil. I was planning to have additional a plus to my CV, so English would be something that would put me ahead from other competitors when looking for a job. So my plan was finish my studies, came learning English, and come back and have my life in Brazil. Really enjoyed the lifestyle in New Zealand. The easy way of doing things here really touched me. So I never really thought that being back would be an easy thing. On my holidays, I went to Brazil all the times. I actually feel the cultural difference between Brazil and New Zealand, how hard it is to deal with these small things on the daily basis, especially bureaucracy and public transport, moving around. The access to things are way harder there, and you need much more. Also, to have the lifestyle I have in New Zealand, I have to work really hard if I can one day reach the same as I have here. So I have to work really, really, really hard to have something that's easily achievable in New Zealand with any type of work.
I'd like to ask you, what kind of job were you doing in Brazil before you left the first time to New Zealand?
My last jobs, I was an agent's consultant. I was a private agent for high executive for Santander Bank. So I was managing trips. So I was responsible to make their life smooth on the professional side. And previous to that, I was working as a marketing assistant in Brazil.
This is what kind of fascinates me about people like us that move to another country, that you had a pretty good job in Brazil and then you moved to New Zealand and you were working as a cleaner. With all respect for people that are cleaners, but it's not the best job in the world. It's not the job that you want to do for a long period of time. That's what fascinates me, that when you move to another country, you're willing to do jobs that back in your country, you probably would never done it, right?
Yes.
So why, when you move to New Zealand and you find a job as a cleaner, what was in your mind and what was your idea to keep doing that job and not going back to Brazil and having a better job?
Well, Danielle, and now I have a different way of looking for those type of jobs, for sure. I believe any job has their importance. They have their value on the society. Without those type of jobs, the life is not running. Also, New Zealand showed me that it's not your job that makes you, but you makes your job. It's the other way around from what I grow up in Brazil. In Brazil, it's so about the success is really related to the positioning you carry, to the job and the title you have. No matter if you get lots or little, but if you have a title, that's what matters. And unfortunately, from my perspective, this is a really wrong way of running a society, right? Of a system. I was advised by my friend that wouldn't be easy moving to New Zealand. I would face this type of operational, manually type of work. So mentally, I have prepared myself. But many times when I was cleaning toilet seats, I have thought like, what I'm doing here? Why did I leave my comfortable job to do this? But as long as you've been here, you are growing and you are learning that you need to be happy with what you have. So it's a liquid love where if that's your option, embrace it, make it the best. And I think that guided me in a good way. I also was working in a nice environment, was safe. Physically, it was very tiring, but mentally, it was very good for myself. I didn't have any worry of thinking of my job after my work hours. That is a very good release, especially for someone who work with like strategic way of thinking all the time, responsibilities. So this balance is really, really good. Instead, mind to use your body. And I actually learned with time how to be happy with what I had.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when I moved to New Zealand, I also did some jobs that weren't super satisfying, or jobs that I didn't really like doing it. But doing those jobs, it pushed me to learn new skills, get more qualification to trying to get a better job. So even doing those kind of jobs, it pushes you in a way that if you like your job, you're in a comfortable situation, you have a good salary, you're not pushed in the same way, you're not motivated to do something else.
Yes, I think I am a good reference for your question. I realized that I am someone who really loves to see straight away results. What I'm saying, like when I'm cleaning, the job I'm doing shows me the results straight after I doing it. When I'm painting, I spend a couple hours painting and straight away I see. So it's a very short term project completed, and that makes me very satisfied. It's a type of work that works really well with my personality. Also, the manual work using my body parts to develop something, it's something that I really enjoy to do. And it's just the beginning of a journey. It's a sign where you can figure out things you maybe never had opportunity to do back home because they are seen as an inferior, a low cost type of work. For example, builders or kitchen hands, chefs, or any type of work that use your hands are not seen really well, at least in Brazil. Mm-hmm. While here, the value given to this type of job are completely different. So if you take a wages from a plumber or from a carpenter, from a builder, from an electrician, they are on the top of the well-paid ones because the society understands how valuable, how risky, and how much energy needs to put on this type of work, comparing to someone who just needs to use a pen and sign a contract. I'm not saying that a person who needs to sign hasn't got responsibilities, mm-hmm. but physically he's not being exposed as any other trades. So that's a good way of starting or taking it as a sign for building up other skills. So from a carpenter, you see that you kind of like craft things. You can develop your own company or making something that's related to you. And so definitely there are great connections between those lower positions to something you like.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of trades, because you told me that when you were after the earthquake, you met this friend in Queenstown that told you to move to Christchurch because there were a lot of jobs. And that's because the Christchurch had a big earthquake in, I don't remember, 2012 or something like that. Had a big earthquake and yes. Pretty much the city needed to be rebuilt. And they were looking for a lot of people like builders, painters, electricians, all these kind of trades to rebuild the city. And because of that, they needed so much of these kind of jobs. You were lucky enough to get your permanent residency in a short amount of time.
Yes. Yeah, that was destiny, maybe. Let's put it this way. I believe I managed to meet wonderful people on my way in New Zealand that gave me the opportunity to be where I am right now. So this guy, he actually opened, a lot of people actually started their own business after the earthquake, because Christchurch was the second largest city, so it was really well populated city on the South Island. And after the earthquake, they had a lot of people left the place, which need to be replaced to rebuild the city from zero. And this guy, he offered myself the opportunity to work with him, even after I told I never had paint before. So initially, I started as an apprentice, and pretty fast I got the idea of painting. There are a lot of opportunities for trades. I had many opportunities to work for different companies while I was working on holiday visa, because they were really in need. A lot of people left the city, and so they need to rebuild the houses for these people come back. That was the main thing. So they were fast. They were in priority of making it. And after a short time working as a painter under my working holiday visa, I applied for work visa with this company, with this Brazilian guy, and I got my visa approved. When I discovered after a very short time that I was under a short skill list as many other trades, and I was able to apply for residency. So I managed to figure out what I need, what papers, and it was a very fast process. I saved up everything I needed. I sent it to the immigration. They believe it. I believe they saw me as a potential person to stay and contribute to the rebuilding of the city that time, and also being a citizen in New Zealand. So I've been granted in a very short period of time, maybe 3 months, took all the period from my application to be granted as a resident in New Zealand. So that was great time of my life.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I moved to New Zealand. Even then, I started in Auckland, and then somebody in Auckland told me to actually you should move to Christchurch because they're looking for people like you, and it would be really easy for you to find a job. And also, the time like you didn't speak much of English, but for me it was like easy to find a job, even though I wasn't the best candidate because I couldn't speak the language. And if somebody asks you to do a task and you don't understand what you had to do, you're not a good applicant for the job. But they gave me a lot of opportunity just because they needed people so badly. And even then, I got my visa. I think I got my work visa approved in a couple of weeks. It was like a super short time to get your visa approved because they needed people so bad.
Mm-hmm. Yes, was a time they were actually grabbing you on the streets and begging to work for them.
Pretty much, yeah. And do you have any regrets about leaving your country?
Well, I think it's tough for everyone. Live your own culture. My personality and character was built in Brazilian culture. So I have families, I have good friends. I had my routine and style of life. That's really hard to live. But apart losing the growth of my nephew and my niece, I think that was something hard, but I wouldn't put it as regret because I was also on the other side building my own and personal life. I try to keep in touch as much as I can, and technology is pretty good for that. Even better now, right? Because back in the time, I barely had a smartphone. But I don't really regret. And I have my good friends, very lucky person. I have my 2 best friends living in New Zealand. Who else could have such a privilege, right? Fortunately, my brother, he tried to move to New Zealand, but he didn't adapt. So he went back to Brazil. My mom came to visit me and she loved it. So yeah, no, I don't really have any regrets. I just miss, and I feel that unfortunately I can't have everything. And because one choice, always there is a loss, you know, you gain one side, you lost something else.
And now you are like a citizen. You got New Zealand passport.
Yes, that was granted last year.
So are you planning so do you think like New Zealand is going to be your home for the rest of your life, or are you thinking of moving either back to Brazil or try different countries?
I think forever, it's a long time period. I'm a person that don't really make like lifetime plans. I prefer work with short-term plans. And for now, I will stay in New Zealand for a little while. I'm about to finish my studies. 3 years ago, I enrolled in a bachelor in business, majoring information systems. So I have to complete. This is my main goal now. I'm on my last semester, about to done with it. And later on, we'll see, because we are facing a crazy time around the world. Brazil's situation is not really good. It's not the right time to be there. I will have to wait the outcomes, things that are out of my control. I am on the safest place in the world right now. We don't know what is basically, we don't talk about virus much. Recently, maybe the last week, we had a couple cases, but before that, we are pretty safe. We are very isolated. My life is still running the same way. But sure, straight to your question, I think of going for Brazil for a short of time. Maybe initially, as I told for New Zealand, maybe I will give you 1 year to see if I can adapt myself. I believe this will be a really tough and hard process of readapting myself. But I'm up to embrace the challenge and maybe try be close to my parents that's getting older, and that's something I feel of spending some more time with them, maybe my nephew, and I will see. For now, my plan maybe next year or next semester going to Brazil for a short of time. But no, not that I can give you, be sure about it as we are facing this situation.
Yeah, no, totally. Right now, it's impossible to make any long plans.
Yes, it is actually.
And what do you think is the biggest upside about living in your country, about being an immigrant?
The best thing of being immigrant is the breaking our bubble, your comfortable zone. Getting to know a new culture makes you face a different way of looking for life, looking to different ways of living, be an immigrant is exotic for someone who didn't have a contact with the immigrant neither. So both ways are gain. You learn something and they learn something. I also believe that, that I never thought about this. What is the best thing? There's a lot of things I could list to you, but I would put it the highlights. It's the getting to know and having a different perspective of life. It's a good feeling. Maybe something you believe that was right all your life, it was wrong because there was another way of doing it. And you grow a lot. You become more independent. You are able to rebuild, to start from zero, to be another person if you want, right?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. There are so many people that live in their country, even just for the reason to restart fresh in another one.
Yes.
And some people just realize once they're doing it that that's a possibility. They never thought about it.
I guess it's not easy, but it's very great feeling when you are able to do it.
Yeah. And do you have any challenges that you had to face in these 10 years in New Zealand? Because you went to New Zealand without a visa, without much money, and then you managed to stay. What was the biggest challenge, and you think it was in these 10 years in living in New Zealand?
I think adapting to another culture, it's not an easy process. When I talk about cultural thing, I'm talking about language, food, even the climate of New Zealand. It's very different from São Paulo. It's much colder in the South Island. Mm-hmm. They have snow, they have ice. I never faced that before. So it was a big, big challenge for me. It is. I am Auckland, one of the warmest cities in whole New Zealand. So I'm pretty happy to be here right now. At the moment, I know you guys cannot see, but I'm wearing a singlet, something impossible to do on the South Island. And I am the type of person who really believes on the power of the sun. So I'm pretty happy to this situation. English, different from what I told, and I believe a lot of people think that 6 months, a year of learning English will be enough and I'll be fluent. Unfortunately, it didn't work this way with me and most of the people. Maybe you were someone who can put a lot of efforts and pick up the language pretty easy. What happened with me actually, because the water kicked my back and I need to learn how swimming. So I couldn't speak any English. That makes me to really go for studies. I was self-studying. I put it that to you guys, but I never went to school. At the end, I never went to the school because I need to work to survive. And all I learned was on the daily basis talking to people. And that feeling of, I want to know what he's talking about. I want to hear, I want to understand better, push me to wake up early in the morning or go to bed really late in the night, staying awake for study longer and learning new words, learning new phrasal verbs. This is a challenge I believe I will face and most immigrants will face as long we live out of our own mother language. It's a constant process of learning, right?
And what do you think was the thing that helped you the most to learn the language, learning English?
I thought of using all my resources to learn English. I am someone very visual and I'm not a religious person, but I was going to the church. I also not a very big drink person, but I was going out pretty much every single night to talk to people in the nightclubs. They are very suggestive to talk to you when you are under alcohol or having a couple of drinks. I also tried to explore as much as I could. I explored the libraries on the cities I was living. Relationship, I had partners, and I'm not saying to you guys to get here and start a relationship, but if it happens, genuinely, that will be a very good add because my partners helped me a lot. On the intimacy, you are able to learn a lot of things. But learning a new language, definitely it's going back as a child. And don't be worried to make mistakes. Repeat it. You see, I still facing issues to say words. But you don't need to be shy to repeat and make mistakes. But that's the way how we learn how to walk, right? We need to fail all the time. We need to hurt ourselves. And the only way to start walking and learning, it's that. At least that's the way how works for me. It was a hard time. And with the hard times, later after hard times, we can take the pleasure of it.
Yeah. And how long do you think it took you to be like a fluent in English and be able to understand a conversation?
Well, depending of we're talking about, I'm still like boozing around, not sure what we're talking about, but have to be something very specific. Like all I told you guys of being a child, that's what I am still. I'm a big child. So still, I don't have any issue to be full or made mistakes, which really, really helped me. I was consistently asking for the same person on the street, the same thing like 5 times. Most of the people would be shy to ask for the second time, but I was like, oh, no, I didn't understand. Can you say again this word? Oh, say this again, this word. So I believe around 6 months, I was able to slowly talking to someone like, oh, can I have that? What are you talking about? But having a good conversation, understanding maybe a year and a half. Year and a half was the time I was able to stand up and say, no, that's right, that's not, or I guess around that time. Don't be shy to be full.
No, even then, the worst thing that can happen if you make a mistake, you make the other person laugh. So
exactly, that's right.
It's the only way to learn is making mistakes. Actually, I enjoy when people make fun of me for whatever, something stupid that I say or the way I say or the pronunciation or whatever, just because it forces me to think twice the next time I say the same word, because I know people will make fun of me. Even my bosses sometimes like make fun of me, like not in a bad way, just to make fun of me because it's the way I say certain things that are funny and maybe mean something else.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm aware of that. So when I say the same thing again, I have to think twice. I have to be like focusing on the pronunciation, how I say the thing, because otherwise I know they're going to make fun of me.
Yes, no, for sure.
It's very helpful.
It works really well with my personality, the fun side of learning. I try to use comedy, fun time to get incomes from it.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel lucky to be an immigrant?
I do. I feel more than lucky. I feel privileged. I'm very privileged to be here. Also to have the opportunity of leaving my country. A lot of people would love to have the same experience as I had and I'm still having. A supportive person in New Zealand that makes a completely difference in my life. Having a good friend and now having my best friend as well, Roberto. It's a privilege, more than lucky. Maybe I had a little bit of luck on the way of being in the right place and talk to the right person to find the job or help someone to help me applying for a visa, filling forms. Overall, I'm very conscious about my privilege and of being an immigrant in New Zealand and all the achievements, all the goals I have aimed so far from where I was to where I am. I'm pretty happy. I'm very, very happy to all I was able to build and everyone that passed on my way and helped me as well. So I'm here what goes around comes around. So if someone helped me, I'm happy to help someone. So anyone that listening to us, and need any help, any assistance, it will be my pleasure to assist as much as I can. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
That's so good.
And knowing what you know now, is there anything that you wouldn't done differently?
Yes. I think if I knew how value of those trade jobs were before, I would, instead of doing a bachelor in Brazil in marketing, that was my degree, I would do something technical. For example, I would be a carpenter, I would be a hairdresser, I would be anything that this level of profession. I'm not saying you cannot be a psychologist here, but on my own experience, without speaking English, without just recent graduated, without any experience on my field, I definitely would came with a different qualification to New Zealand. I also would take more risk. I am someone who took a long time, but sometimes we need to take risks, and these risks maybe can take us to another stage of life. I would have start my studies earlier, and if there is a place where you can take a risk, it's New Zealand. If nothing goes right with your next choice, you always can go back to your previous job position because the minimum wages enable you to have a life. As an immigrant, we are pretty tough. We work hard. We have a great, broad way of looking the world. I'm talking in general, right? So that would be something I would have done. And also have exposed myself while in Brazil more to English. Force, even it's a tiring process, I would put myself more exposed to listening English or reading English things, just to get used, for your brain in an environment that will be soon in place.
Yeah, I kind of want to add something about you said about jobs and going to a different career, because I realized that I'm an electrician by trade, and be an electrician having these kind of trades makes your life as an immigrant so much easier because you can do that job anywhere you want in the world. Because everywhere you go, they still need electricians. I even spoke with somebody else, Louise, from my previous episodes. She went to a culinary school to become a chef just because it was so much easier, because everywhere you go, people needs to eat. So it's easy to find a job wherever you go as a chef. And these kind of trades are so much easier to start all over in another country, even though maybe you are a qualified electrician in your country and you move to another one, you're not qualified anymore, but you're still able to find a job and then build your career from that point. Now, from your example, you said you're a psychologist, it would be so much harder to find a job position in a new country because there are less demand of psychologists than there are electricians. There are less jobs to apply for.
Yes.
So I agree with you. If you are in the process of starting a career or thinking about it, having these trade jobs makes your life as an immigrant so much easier to find a job and find a sponsor and be able to get a work permit in a new country.
Yeah, that's another point. I'm talking overall. So I'm talking the facility of finding a job, the facility of applying for work visa, and also those trades in New Zealand, they are short-list skills. So they are jobs that no one are capable to do it here. It will give you the possibility to even apply for residence. If you go through the immigration website, New Zealand immigration website, we will see a list of trades. Of course, there are psychologists, but I believe the regulation for being a psychologist in Brazil and being in New Zealand, it's huge, and there is a way long process and require much more criteria than actually being a trade.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, maybe that would be my advice.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And do you have any particular advice you would like to give to the listeners?
No matter where you're planning to go, either New Zealand, Canada, or whatever, where you're going, try to learn how things works, culturally, how it works on those places. So you don't have a shock and you can easily and better adapt to it. I'm talking about different perspectives of a society, religious, political, even behavioral, the way how people eat. Do they use hands? Do they use fork? knife. That will definitely make easier your integration where you're going, because you have to adapt to a new system, not the system needs to adapt to yourself. And I'm saying that more for the perspective of a lot of immigrants. I can see they still behave as they were on the other country, from their country, and sometimes are behaviors that's not really well seen here. For example, having a really loud car with music late in the night, that's not the way how the society works here. So don't bring it. I'm just giving a very random example for you, but maybe having a good research and talking to people and different type of people, not only go for the same thoughts as you, but talk to different type of people, old, young, woman, man. So you have a different perspective. And from that, you can build your own idea of how it will be and how things works.
That's a really good point. I mean, if you are more integrated with the culture, the more welcoming the people will be with you, because shows that you want to be part of the culture and you respect the rules. Because might be like a silly example. If you go to somebody else's place for dinner or something like that, if they're in their house, the rules is to remove your shoes when you get in. If you don't remove the shoes, the host won't be happy, won't be pleased. So you kind of need to adapt to be well seen, well received in a new environment.
Yeah, society has code, right?
Yeah.
Society has, the system has codes. We need to follow them to things goes well and in place.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. And if people related with your story wants to reach out to you, what's the best place to find you?
Well, thank you, Danielle. Thank you, everybody that's listening to me. I'm very easy to be reached. You guys can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. I don't know if you're going to put on the description of it, but you are more than welcome to put all my social medias and my email in case someone needs some tip or help or whatever. I'm here for it.
Thank you so much. And definitely everything, all the links and everything, as usual, will be in the show notes at immigrantslife.com/episode 39. And yeah, thank you so much, Rafael, for doing this. I really, really enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Thank you, everybody. And I might see you guys here.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see you again in a future episode. Who knows?
Okay, why not?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. You can find the show notes with everything we talk about in this episode at immigrantslife.com/episode 39. If you want to support the show, you can share this episode with your friends and you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. And do you want to be my next guest in the show and share your story? Just visit immigrantslife.com/yourstory. Thanks again for listening. Talk to you in the next one. Ciao.